So this is a statue of the famous uh, Roman era surgeon Galen. He was actually a Greek, but he was of the Roman era, and it's pretty important. Well, this is the sculpture statue of him in Pergamon. Pergamon, sorry, the pronunciation. That where he come from originally. There's also an Asclepion there. We'll get to that in a moment. But what's so you look at the Roman surgical tools that they've found. You could almost replace them with modern surgical tools. So at the time back then they had a different, like the four humours. So without going into the detail of that, the different philosophy in regards to medicine. But with so much that was happening during this Roman period, but we'll call it wasn't just Romans. For instance, Galen, we almost took a big step forward in regards to medicine. And so we moved away from the old four humours type of medicine, leeching and that, and through people like Galen, we were looking at some modern, very sophisticated surgery. So we see some of those tools that have been recovered. And we'll get to it in a moment, but the point of this video will be about Asclepius and this snake and how that connects to medicine and is symbolized in Hermetic architecture especially. One of the reasons that Galen was able to take this big step forward in medicine, we can look at, for instance, World War One. The doctors at the time, if you're working in a city or a suburban clinic, you would very rarely come across massive trauma. So, only every once in a while would someone come in with their leg half cut off, that type of stuff. But during World War One, thousands of soldiers were coming in with massive trauma. And so the doctors were able to gain a lot of experience dealing with, so in their whole lifetime, they might only come across these types of injuries every once in a while. But during World War One, for instance, they were dealing with it on a daily basis in large numbers. So they were able to learn and experiment. It was also because of the war, it's not looked well upon to do experimental stuff in your suburban city hospitals. But in World War One, that was one example where doctors were able to experiment. Same thing happened in field hospitals in World War Two. You had a lot of major trauma coming through, and the doctors had to very quickly learn how to deal with it, and they learned, and through using experimental methods and new types of surgery. The same sort, well, if you're old enough to remember the show MASH, you had masses of young men coming in with horrific injuries, and even if you're familiar with the series, one of the common points that come up was these experimental new techniques that the surgeons were using to save lives. Well, that's one of the reasons why Galen and surgeons of the time were able to take this massive step forward, because especially, they were following the Roman armies and legions around. You had battle after battle after battle, and they had massive amounts of very horrific injuries, massive trauma. And so they learnt very quickly, as where if you're just practicing in some little nice quarter of Rome, you're not going to really come across that very often, or you're not going to get paid for it. So just the doctors weren't incentivized, but also they were stuck on the old philosophy of medicine. So that was why Galen, is important in these tools. But the point really is healing in this snake here. That's the Rod of Asclepius, as it's called, but there's quite a few other nice little connections, especially in symbolism, astronomy in regards to architecture. So this is the Anderson Stewart building, Sydney of University here, and Sydney is resplendent with all these symbols hidden in plain sight, the Faculty of Medicine, and that's important because who do we have up here? We have Asclepius, the Greco-Roman god of healing. And that's a picture of him. So the rod with a single snake wound about. So that's Asclepius. That's the symbol of Asclepius, the single snake. Just like earlier picture with Galen. The snake about the rod. And so the Faculty of Medicine, of course, would have it. They're also interesting in Myria, down on the south coast there. We have the snake around the rod again. It's nice. Myria is a lot of masonry connections, but also Freemasons. And we also have this obelisk there of Myria granite. Now, Myria granite's very special. If you live in Sydney, the the pylons of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, Captain Cook statue in Hyde Park, and also the columns at the GPO were built of Maria granite. It was a very highly prized, very special type of stone. And so the GPO building, and we'll come to this because this building, well, even there's right there are some symbols there, but the columns themselves of Maria granite. So Asclepius, just as an idea, so we see the snake there. Now these are older sculptures. Again, Asclepius, god of healing, son of Apollo, and one snake curling about the rod. Mosaics, other pictures. So this symbol is a symbol of healing. You see it in coins, ancient coins as well. Again, the snake and the single rod. Now you'll often see doctors, and they'll have the rod, the caduceus, with two snakes wound about it. That's actually the symbol of Hermes, which is more a general symbol of science rather than a specific symbol of healing, but the science of healing. So it can, both of them apply, but strictly speaking, the single snake around the rod is the important one. And you'll see it in paramedics carrying this. This is called the Star of Life as well sometimes. And even the World Health Organization, the rod and the single snake wound about the outside, the symbol of Asclepius. Temples to Asclepius were ancient hospitals, and it's also like there are some like there are a few very famous Asclepions, these old hospitals where it was said that no one ever died. Well, what happened was that if you were close to death, they'd move you outside, and so this was one way that they could protect their reputation. Just on an anecdotal side note, but Asclepions, different spelling of it, so I'm just going to use this sort of standard one. But like in Athens and many other places, including Epidaurus, Doris, as well, from where Galen, and even the connection to Asclepion himself and the story of him. We'll get to that in a moment. This is the British Medical Association building in Sydney. Medical Association, what do we see? The Rod of Asclepius. And even there we see it in the banner itself. So Rod of Asclepius, and there's just the outside, quite a nice Art Deco building. And so there are two variations. So there's the knight, and these are both from the British Medical Association building here in Sydney. Just down on Macquarie Street, just down the road, still on Macquarie Street, the health department, and just off to the side of the building we see the emblem, a snake around the tree, but still very Asclepionish, if that's the word. Asclepius was the son of Apollo. This is Hyde Park, the Archibald Fountain. All these places around Sydney, but you could apply it in New York. I've done it in other series. For instance, Asclepius was the son of Apollo. Also, earlier I talked about the symbols of Perseus. So we see there Perseus holding the head of Medusa. He was sent on this quest by Athena. So Athena, this is a GPO building in Sydney. Athena with the owl as well. And also in the GPO building, that's where the Maria granite columns are, we also have Medusa. Now, this is a simplified version, but sometimes Medusa's quite, gorish. That's what, but you also see it like this. So that's the snakes. And it's interesting, the thunderbolts coming off there as well. There's Hermetic connections, that's why the double snake is there, but the thunderbolt is important because Asclepius, after Perseus killed Medusa, Athena gave the blood, or the good, there was two types of blood Medusa had. Athena gave Asclepius half of it, and with that blood he was able to cure mortals of mortality. So he was able to make men, women to us, mortal as well with this blood. This did not please Zeus, the thunderbolts of Zeus as well. So that's GPO building as well here in Sydney, just to stay there. And he killed Asclepius with a thunderbolt. Thunderbolt, Zeus, god of the sky, and his thunderbolt famously as well. So, but there's a nice connection here as well because, again, I did another videos talking about how constellations tell this story. And if you look at it, especially through Greco-Roman mythology, all these constellations actually, tell a coherent story, and it's a nice way of storing this knowledge. But Ophiuchus, he is sometimes referred to as the 13th sign of the zodiac, the serpent bearer, and that's for the constellation Ophiuchus, that's actually the symbol. Again, it's the Rod of Asclepius as well, which is a nice thing. Another one of interest is the brazen serpent of Moses, but I won't cover that at the moment. But the serpent bearer and another like a constellational symbol, the 13th month. Greeks, Mayans, Romans, and even Egyptians had a day of 360 years plus a 5-day, so 12 months of 30 days to coincide with the full moon, but also a 13th month of 5 days, where both the Mayans and the Romans, for instance, both considered this month to be a very unlucky time to begin new ventures. So sort of like a holiday period where you just don't start anything new. This is a bad luck time to start things new. So it's Apicius, the 13th, sometimes referred to as the 13th sign of the zodiac. And staying in Sydney, this is the art gallery, and they have the wrestler with the serpent. Throughout, I've done a couple of videos, and the art gallery, they know what's going on, and even where they've placed certain artworks is the very same way that the city plan and the very special buildings and the symbols and statues elsewhere are connected to it. It's just extraordinary, lovely coincidence, I might say, but I'm sure they know what's going on. Sydney is a very hermetic city. It's very new, but because we've never had a war or a revolution, a lot of our old buildings and stuff has been preserved, and so we haven't lost that, including our street plans going back to, which are, again, filled with this type of knowledge. So also, again, this is an example where we have this wrestler with the serpent, which is essentially it's a wink and a nod to Apicius. What do we have in the background? I have this painting here of medicine, of doctors learning. So there's certain town planners, artistic directors, park designers, even the way where certain plants have been put in, for instance, in the botanical gardens and stuff. They know, secrets hidden in plain sight. So, the Rod. Okay, well, again, I've done like I did a series on America, and many series on America. But for instance, especially you follow the same architects. So the Flatiron building, again, that's got a Medusa symbol on there as well, and you'll find everywhere, really everywhere, especially these. Now we've got these new monstrosities, steel, concrete, and glass. They've still got the measurements built into them, still hermetic, but I'm old school in a lot of ways, and I think that these older, not only is the architecture much more beautiful, but the symbols connected to it, and it's something worth. So yeah, that's ancient medicine and the symbols there. Again, if you want to look a little bit more, Galen in type of surgery. I did a video a while back as well on ancient Indians who did very sophisticated plastic surgery, including nasal reconstructive surgery at a really advanced level, but using very simple tools. Instead of sutures, they would actually use ants, and they would have stitches that would dissolve, so they could even, again, very sophisticated, brilliant knowledge in the past, using simple tools, using some very simple know-how. I must put that forward. But again, you go back not too long ago, where a lot of our big scientific breakthroughs, that was done with simple tools, but very advanced thinking and knowledge and reasoning and study, and that's tip of a hat to the surgeons and the development of this, and also to the architects and the designers who, not too long ago, still now, for instance, this is all pretty new in Maruya. They know what it's again hidden in plain sight, and through ancient mythology we find, there's geometry, arithmetic, astronomy, and music is embedded in these old symbols as well. And anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and have a good one. Again, once you get your eyes open, especially if you're lucky enough, as I am in Sydney, to have these older buildings and statues and designs still in place, it's embedded there, secrets in plain sight indeed. And cheers, have a good one.